What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I'm your host, Piers Austin, the bald, the beard, the beautiful Piers Austin. And tonight I'm lost for words. I have a very special guest on. I've been a big fan of the podcast this man has put out. He's very well known in the professional wrestling world. He is the two-man power trip, or part of the two-man power trip, John Poz. But before I bring John out, I just want to take a quick pause for the cause, just to thank a couple of sponsors. First up is A-Rock Designs. A-Rock Designs is that company you see all over the wrestling Facebook pages, the wrestling Facebook groups, the Instagram pages. They make custom wrestling cups, hoodies, keychains, tumblers. They made me a really amazing CM Punk tumbler that I absolutely love. Make sure to check them out. You can also check them out at arockdesigns.com. Ashley Rodriguez, her products are amazing. And like I said, you get a great deal when you do shop at A-Rock Designs. Just mention Signal Studio. Just mention Shooting the Shit. And next sponsor is Signal Studios. So Signal Studios is that recording studio based out in Sydney, Australia. They help me supply some amazing music to my entrance video and my exit video from a young band called the Cicadas. Make sure to go and check those guys out as well. But Signal Studios, they are probably one of the best recording studios here in Sydney, Australia. Make sure you go and check them out. Even if you're an independent professional wrestler, you want to get your hands on some fly entrance music, hit up Signal Studios. They can mix, master, and produce any kind of track that you want and send that out worldwide, baby. But guys, without further ado, I'm not going to waste this man's time anymore. I'm going to bring him out. John, welcome to Shooting the Shit. Thanks for coming on, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me, Piers. Appreciate it. Love that intro music, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much, man. These guys, they do some amazing work. This young band, dude, it's ridiculous. So
good stuff.
Really cool band. But John, man, you've just recently joined up with the Russo brand, and also Harmeen Media Group. I think you're probably one of the most busiest men in podcasting. Yes. I do 2 shows and like I just sit there and see the stuff that you're putting out, man, and I just feel lazy.
I got you. Yeah.
When did this all start for you? Like, the podcast journey. Like, what was your original plan when you started it?
So it was about 6 years ago. It was January 2015. We started, and it was just like, let's just have some fun, review some shows. We were listening to some other shows, and some other people that are doing podcasts were like, man, they don't know enough about wrestling, or they're just kind of watching wrestling, but they weren't really big fans, and maybe they're getting into it now. But we were just like, man, just been such big fans. I've been a fan probably since about 1985 or so. So I was very, very little, very young. So I was like, man, I would just want to kind of do a podcast and just talk about my passion, and I just absolutely love professional wrestling. So I figured, hey, why not jump in and start a podcast?
Yeah, and I think that's where it starts with for a lot of people, is like having the love and passion for something and just wanting to talk about it with, friends and other people and have that community base, because that's what, wrestling is. It's, wrestling's for everybody. Everybody has a place in the world of wrestling, whether it's fan or performer of any walk of life.
Absolutely. I feel like anybody could be a fan of wrestling. You don't even necessarily have to know the language of the said wrestling show you're watching. You could still get into it because it's just a unwritten or unspoken language. You just you're a fan. You love wrestling, and it is what it is.
Oh, 100%. But what got you into wrestling, man?
You know what? It's weird. My dad was a big fan, not like huge, but he was a fan. He knew stuff. He met Fabulous Moolah. He used to sell insurance to Pedro Morales, which was like after you grew up a little bit, like that's awesome. Holy shit, you're hanging out with Pedro Morales, selling him insurance. So like cool stuff. But my cousins were huge fans. They used to have the big Hulk Hogan standee, so we used to go to the house and like look at their stuff. And they had the LJN figures. We wanted the LJN figures, the big WWF figures. So It was just one of those things where it's like, man, and as soon as we started watching it, as soon as I saw Hogan, I was like, boom, I was hooked. Just loved him, loved WWF at that point, and just loved the business, and that kind of just hooked me from there.
Yeah, I think so many people. I think that era of wrestling, which was probably one of the biggest peaks in wrestling. Like if not the biggest, because it really sort of catapulted wrestling into another level of entertainment, if you will.
Man, just crazy. And then through my dad's work, he used to get us all these action figures and stuff because they had a toy department, and one of their guys that worked for the toy department would go to these conventions and these toy shows and stuff, and he'd always come back with all these toys, and he came back with this awesome Roddy Piper autograph for us. It was just like, man, I was like, this is awesome. These guys are larger than life. Look at this. They're headlining these toy conventions. We're getting all this stuff from them. Just it's one of those things you just fall head over heels for professional wrestling.
It is. And did you find, like, the more you got educated in the world of wrestling, and obviously where you stand now, can you still sit down and watch wrestling with and be a fan?
Yeah, yes, for sure. But it's funny, like sometimes you watch and you're like, oh, that sucked, or they exposed the business here. When you're a fan as a kid, you never even think of that stuff. You're like, oh, that was great, or that stinks. Like you don't think like, oh, that was business exposing. So it's a little different watching it now, especially because I do
Mm.
the AEW review show with PJ, just incredible. And it's like really kind of trying to study what these guys are doing. And I was like, sometimes I wish I could just not have any expectations. You just go in straight as a fan, not analyze it at all. It would kind of make it maybe more enjoyable. But I definitely think that it's a little different watching it now because you're almost too smart. You know a lot of the stuff and a lot of the tricks of the trade. Not all of them, and obviously a lot of the stuff. I think fans think they know more than they really know. But I think sometimes it's like, oh man, the slapping of the leg and doing this, and some of the stuff is just way too exposing the business.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Like, I remember seeing NXT, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, and I actually was talking about this with Ben, is like in the women's tag match, like they had two of the competitors on the other side of the ring. They realized they were in the wrong spot, literally arm in arm, walked over to the other
Oh,
corner of the ring to get jumped, like to have someone sitting on the top rope just to jump down. And I was like, you know what I mean? Like I get in that point where sometimes like, okay, I can enjoy a good match, and then something like that happens, and then I'm just like, fuck, now I don't want to watch. It's
yeah.
hard.
It can completely take you out of it. I love it when it sucks you in and you just completely forget and you just get invested. Like, oh, that was awesome, or you're watching the stuff and you're really enjoying it. But stuff like that completely takes you out. I just saw a clip from AEW, but it was a tape show, so I didn't know why they didn't edit it out. But literally, Luchasaurus and this other big guy Cesar, they literally start going like this, like in slow motion, and they both forgot the spot. So I was like, why would you not just improvise? And then they just continued to get back in the position. And then they did the spot. I was like, come on, guys. Like, totally exposed the business. They basically looked like they told each other, no, you got to stand here. No, you stand here. And they switched spots. I was like, come on, guys. Maybe if I was a kid, I would have just been like, what the hell was that? What's going on? But now, you're realizing this stuff. You're like, guys, just improvise. Just go with it. No need to totally just try to do a spot again when you both screwed up. Just hit each other.
Just move on to the next part, like
Yep.
don't try and like relive the thing. It's when you see a miss spot and they go back and redo it, it's like just that determination. No,
Yeah.
we're gonna do this fucking spot.
And it's also like
It's
so
like
robotic too. It's like, man, guys, you don't need to like. I guess they have the whole match planned out, which kind of stinks too. That there's no improvisation. You can't kind of change it up. You can't improv at all. And they're just like, oh wait, what's the spot after this? Oh, we have to go back and do this before we do that. I hate that kind of stuff. I wish they would just call it on the fly.
yeah, I mean, but that's like from a lot of wrestlers that I've spoken to, like the old school guys, I get told, when they got into like training, like to wrestle, it's like you learned how to bump, and that was pretty much it. You know what I mean? Like some of them didn't even get smartened up to the business till they had that first match. And,
Yep.
but even then it's like, no, once you learn how to bump and you learn like, the basic lockups and stuff like that, then you go and you try and get booked, and then you try and learn from like obviously being on the road and experienced by wrestling veterans and stuff like that. And it just seems like, yeah, I agree. A lot of the stuff does seem a lot robotic now, like as you compare it to like previous eras of wrestling where it's like, it seemed like a much more aggressive style of a fight. Like if you look at like the 80s NWA sort of style.
Yeah, it's funny too because I talked to some of the old school wrestlers and they said, "Oh, they didn't get smartened up until like they were already having matches." So it's funny
Yeah.
like how different that is from today, where it's totally everyone knows, the work and everyone knows the stuff. So like Dominic DeNucci's teaching Shane and Foley and Cody Michaels and the guys, and not 100% telling them that is cooperation.
Yeah.
So it does make it more real for sure.
Yeah, and like it definitely does. And I think even like in today's style, like you see sort of like you've got characters, but like you look at sort of something like AEW where a majority of their roster are extensions of the character, if so to speak, like of the actual person. Where I think WWE is, Apollo Crews, for example, what they're doing with him, it's you know what I mean. Like you don't see that sort of happening in the AEW creative side of the performer. What do you think of that? Do you think that's right or?
I feel like WWE though they want that total control. So sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad because sometimes you get like this cookie cutter terrible character that's never going to get over or can't get over just because of the way it's written, the character name or whatever the circumstance. I feel like you got to let the wrestler be the wrestler, and that's kind of what AEW, a good thing that they do is let the guy be the guy, and they got to get over kind of on their own. They give them some leeway and some material, but basically the guy's cutting their own promo. They're not being scripted. They're not being handed a thing and saying this is exactly what you need to say. This is exactly how you have to say it. This is your character. This is your new name. It's a lot more free in
Yeah,
AEW, and WWE is so overly scripted and overly produced. It's almost to the point where it's ridiculous. Once you let like guys free a little bit, that's when they start to get great. I mean, Steve Austin, if he was around in today's era, it's really big. Well, you gotta, they would try to confine him. Oh, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. Yeah, you gotta let the guy be the guy, and that's why there hasn't been like a big time WB star in a long while. I mean, I guess Cena's kind of like the last one, but it feels like that they don't let the guy be the guy. It's so cookie cutter, it's ridiculous.
yeah, and I think it's like they also try and like revive old gimmicks as well. Like they tried to make Kevin Owens the modern day Stone Cold, and
Yeah, yep.
I mean, like even giving him the finisher, it's like, dude, like why not just make him, what I mean, who he is? Like, why try and relive something of the past? Because they're two completely different performers altogether, So
Yeah, and why would Owens want to do a stunner when the most popular wrestler, arguably the most popular wrestler of all time, that was his finisher? So you're going to copy him, and you're going to be a copycat of that guy. I just don't get that. I'm never going to understand that. I just think you got to do it on your own and create your own stuff. Like, man, that's just so lame to me.
yeah, I completely agree, man. I prefer like originality. Like when I see something that is so original, you know what I mean. Like especially in wrestling, where everything has been recycled like through the
Yep.
times over and over again. But in onto your sort of career with Two Man Power Trip, like because you guys were recognized by Rolling Stone as like one of the top podcasts for professional wrestling to follow. How did you guys build yourselves up? Like, from being guys to do this as this is something to be fun to then taking it to like a professional level.
It's funny. It just we never really kind of sought out or thought about it, but it was like, wow, um, we're starting to catch a little steam here. Like we started to get some good interviews. We got George Animal Steel on. Like at first, we're starting to get Ivan Koloff, so we're starting to like pick up some names. And I was just like, man, I feel like we shouldn't even be talking about like what we like about wrestling so much. We should just be interviewing wrestlers. And we went to basically a few weeks into strictly interview show trying to get guys. And then it was like, okay, who can I get? And I was just trying to build up my Rolodex and build up my Rolodex. And I was doing conventions at that point where, I was bringing guys in and they're signing and stuff. So sometimes I'd have them on to do an interview, and it was kind of snowball from there. And even at the conventions, I get names and numbers and stuff, and I try to build up the Rolodex. So once we had George Steele, then we got Ivan Koloff. Then we had Kane on. Then we had, this person, that person. Then we had Dusty Rhodes on. I feel like that got us a lot of attention. Unfortunately, of course, Dusty passed away a few days later, which was just a complete shock to me. I was just floored because
Yeah, I
just
can
literally was
imagine.
just talking to the guy. I was like, man, I didn't even know he was sick. I didn't know anything. He didn't let on virtually anything that he was ill or nothing. So that like gave us a little bit of street cred, we with Dusty, and it was funny, just
Mm.
kept snowballing and snowballing. Then the dirt sheets started picking up. Well, not even dirt sheets, not really, but really the wrestling websites started picking up our interviews, and we would have something, maybe it was transcribed or they would transcribe and they throw it out there. So I feel like it just kind of snowballed and it just got bigger and bigger. And sometimes you get this big guest and then everybody kind of like gets their eyes on you because like, wow, how they getting this guy, or how they getting that guy. So that
Mm.
definitely was something that just kind of just happened.
Yeah, and I think it's like, obviously I do a show like that with this show, and it's like, when I started out, it was the very same way, like just trying to get people on and trying to sort of speak to different wrestlers and try and do it in a different way. And your show has been definitely one that, for me, I've been a huge fan of for years and listened to for many years. So to sit down and be able to have you on and to pick your brain is truly amazing for me. Um, you know, one of the things, like when you interview people, sometimes like you can sometimes like not mesh well with another person when you interview them, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes it's like you have interviews that are really good where like the conversation just flows, and then sometimes it's like there's something, might be a communication barrier there. Have you ever like faced that yourself, like over the years of like you having trying to have a conversation and you just sort of getting like very short answers?
Oh, big time. There's a few of them that really, really stick out. Like, no offense, because I love Butterbean, but man, I interview Butterbean. I hate that the short answers. It's like you got to give me something. Like like you're professional. You've been interviewed a bunch of times.
Yeah,
Like if somebody gives you this, like you got to kind of give them a little bit of substance. You can't just say yes, no, yeah, that was great. Yeah, like you're being interviewed. Like these guys
yeah,
have experience being interviewed. So it was funny. It's like Butterbean's like, yeah, WWF. Like it's like it just felt like pulling teeth with him. And it's like, oh my god, I can't believe just because of his personality, you would think like, wow, this guy he
mm,
just seems like fun loving, great answer and stuff. And I've seen him do other interviews before, and it's the same thing. So I was like, okay, good. It's not just me because you're right. Sometimes you yourself just don't mesh well with certain people. I've had that even with guys I thought like, oh, this is going to be great, going to mesh well, and it just didn't connect. You didn't mesh well with that person. Maybe another person does. Not to say that they're a bad interview, but it's like, man,
mm.
some guys just aren't great interviewees. Some guys maybe you don't mesh well with, but then it's. I love it when you get those guys you do mesh well with and you do have a great connection with because
Oh,
then
it's
it
the
just
best.
free flowing and it can go as long as you want or you bring them back a bunch of times and sometimes it's just unbelievable to get those guests. But yeah, Butterbean, to be honest, Matt Seidel I had on. I did not like interviewing him at all,
Really?
which is funny because I've heard him on other interviews. He was great. So I
Mm,
asked a buddy of mine who had him on previously. He had interviewed him. He's like, "Oh, maybe he's having a bad day or something." I was like, "I don't know." He seemed like he was kind of somewhere else when I was interviewing, like he was
yeah.
busy or he had his doing something. And it was weird. I'm like, oh yeah, so you had, your pro wrestling school. Do you want to promote it? And he's like, no. I was like, what the hell? I was like, okay. It's just funny. Like some of the guys are like, I was like, why wouldn't you want to promote it? He's like, oh, if you know about it, you know about it. I don't want all these marks showing up to the school. Like he was being like real weird. So maybe something was going on in his personal life. I don't take it personally, but I was just like, okay, I guess we didn't mesh well together.
Mm.
But yeah, he was just he was one of those interviews. Is like I'd like to get that one back. I re-listened to it. I was like, okay, it wasn't that bad, but like doing it and it's like, man, we're just not flowing. We're not meshing.
Yeah, and I think when you have that, it's like like I always feel bad if I have one of those interviews because I'm like, oh man, like what could I like? You try and relive like what you can do differently, and then you go
Yeah.
back and listen to it and go, okay, well it wasn't bad. It was just not as free flowing as you'd want it to be. But
Yep.
who's been like one of the names for you, like that you've interviewed that you've just been like, oh my god, like I'm almost at the point of marking out the fact that you can have a conversation with a person, or have you ever had that moment?
Sting for sure. Sting
Oh
and
yeah,
Dusty, I would say above all the people I've interviewed. I don't. I mean, there's been so many great guys that I've interviewed, but for some reason, I don't know. Like, I know you try not to be like too quote unquote marky or like too much of a
yeah,
fanboy, but I know Sting just because he's one of my all time favorite wrestlers, and Dusty, well, obviously one of my all time favorites. Really, like
uh-huh.
those two stick out as being like, holy crap! Wow, I can't believe I had on Sting or I was talking to Sting. Just was obsessed with him for as a fan for so long and he's just one of those guys like this is awesome. Like he was great. And he's like the nicest guy too. It's just like, man,
Yeah.
like you think like, oh wow, yeah, he doesn't realize he's like Sting. He's like, man, he's so nice,
Mhm.
and so friendly and so cordial. You're just like, man, does he realize he's the Stinger? Like, come on, man, you're one of the greatest of all time. What are you doing? But definitely for those, I think those two, I would that the first come to my mind.
Yeah, and that's the thing, being a great human being and being someone like the Stinger as well. It's like
Yep.
it's just like a win-win, and then you can have that amazing conversation and have that banter back and forth. But like, When for you, like, did it sort of start to change where, the podcasting went from, being, a fun hobby aspect to being, right, this is what I do for a living now?
Um, Probably it wasn't really like that long ago where I was like, man, I can just keep doing this and getting sponsors and just keep going to interviews. But it was really kind of led by just my passion for the business. I didn't even like think about it, like just doing it financially and stuff. It's just like if you don't like what you're doing, it's just going to become a job. And I didn't want it to become a quote unquote job. I just wanted to keep it rolling and just, you just keep trying to get the sponsors to keep it rolling. But also, it's like if you lose the passion and you don't like what you're doing, you don't still love interviewing guys or talking about the business or reliving old shows or watching
Yeah.
new shows and doing reviews. It's like, man, if you lose that, then it's not fun anymore, and you just don't want to do it really. So it's you have to keep the passion for it, you have to keep the love for it, and you almost have to put that in the back of your mind. Yes, you're pushing for the money and the sponsors and the different things of making money in the business, and you need that, but you almost can't put that in the forefront. It just has to be in the back of your mind. The front part should be the passion and drive and the love and pushing forward, and just almost not even thinking like, oh, I got to do this work. You work. Maybe
Mm.
make a list of what you need to do, but you just keep pushing and you keep focusing, and you don't even worry about the other stuff. And I know they kind of sound silly. It's like, oh, but you have to do this. If you don't do the first part and love it, the second
Mm.
part, it becomes even harder. So you just, to me, it's just push forward, just stay aggressive. If something bad or something negative happens, the sponsor's taking too long paying me or something, get the next sponsor and just keep rolling, and then you'll go back to that one. Or like, oh man, this person canceled. Well, only get the next person. Just keep rolling.
Yeah.
Keep that train moving. Do not stop. Just keep going and stay aggressive.
Yeah, and I think that that's the the main point. And I think even in like in today's society, I think a lot of people want things right now, like start doing something, and I want to achieve this like
Yep.
tomorrow. But obviously, to be successful in anything, you've got to put in the reps, you've got to put in the time, and you've got to have that passion to do it as well. Because if you don't have the passion, it's really hard to portray that out to someone else. And when you're interviewing someone and having that conversation with them, you know an audience can see through that.
Absolutely. And I could see some podcasts that come and not to, disparage them or say anything negative, but you
Yeah.
could tell like the person is literally like, okay, I'm going to make a quick money off this and I'm going to do it right away. And it's like, that's not the way it works. You got to be into it. You have to be passionate about it. Then the money will follow. Then it'll come. But it's not like a get rich quick scheme. Trust me, even
No.
Conrad has said it because maybe not he failed, but maybe he wasn't as successful at first and just kept working at it. And then now look at the train keeps on moving. So it's like, you can't just kind of get a quick fix or quick money scheme and think you're going to do it. You have to actually be into it, be passionate of it, have a game plan, maybe of success, but not automatically think like, oh, I'm going to make money off this stuff right away.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what the way that I've always had that mindset of it, where it's just like, I started doing this for fun. I continue to do this for fun.
Yep.
And you've got to have that passion for it, because as I said, like your audience then sort of starts to go, man, this guy's kind of phoning it in. Like, he doesn't really seem that into it, or for whatever reason, but John, what, for you, got you come over to the Russo brand? Because that's something that's happened just recently. Obviously, my other show, Wrestling with Tragedy, also part of the Russo brand
Yep.
group as well. How did that deal come to be? Like, how did you guys sort of join forces, Russo and Two Man Power Trip?
So I've been on Triple Threat with Shane Douglas for a while, which is on the Russo brand. He kind
Mm.
of wanted us to come over with Shane, so we were just kind of doing that show, and it was going still on there, still doing very well. And then all of a sudden, I had all these other shows I'm picking up, Dutch and Dr. Tom and PJ and Sullivan and stuff, and then he just basically. Vince Russo, he just messaged me. He's like, "Hey, what do you think about coming over the Russo brand?" So me myself was like, "Well, I would do it, immediately." Because we've
Yeah.
interviewed him before, and I've actually done a few specials for him on the Brawl for All, just for the brand, on Brawl
Yeah.
for All Bash of the Beach 2000. I've interviewed him a bunch of times. It's just something, just stayed friendly with him, and he liked me and I liked him, and we just kind of just shooting the shit and DM back and forth, or we had a few phone calls and stuff. And it's just one of those things. He's like, "Hey man, I want to bring you over to the brand," and this was many months before it happened. I was like, "Hey, I'm all in. It's just that I got to talk to Dr. Tom, and then I got to talk to,
Yeah.
well, PJ's on there already. So he was like an easy, PJ, let's still also
Yeah.
bring Pro Wrestling 101 over the brand. But then it's like, I got to, Sullivan, I got to tell Dutch. So it's like, it's not just me, like, oh, I'm cocky.
Mm.
Vince, let me think about it. It's like, oh, of course. Yeah, let's do it. But,
Yeah.
I have to, talk with all the other guys first. So I had a couple meetings with Vince and the guys, and we were going to go back
Mm.
and forth about their plan and my plan and what they wanted and what I wanted. So it's like, man, I was like, it's just a perfect fit as long as everybody agrees. Boom, everybody agreed. January came, and we're all on the brand. And I've been loving the experience so far. I think Vince has been very happy. He's had me on Castrating the Marks as well, which was a great show. Love that show. Just so funny.
Absolutely.
But it's one of those things where it's like, I've been really enjoying it and just keep churning out more shows. And I think Vince and the brand are hopefully happy with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the brand is just doing some amazing work and got some amazing, names associated with it that just keep putting out some amazing content, which is all very unique and different to each other as well, which is, in a lot of times in the world of podcasting, especially in a subgenre, you know what I mean? Like there can be a lot of overlap at times. And I think the brand really does it quite well where there's not much of an overlap, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I feel like he just keeps getting bigger and bigger. He was telling me he was going to add some people, like he wanted to add me, and he's like, I got some other ones. And he had the beautiful people. And obviously, you guys
Yeah.
were on there, and Vito. And it's crazy. If you think about, and I know he's got that awesome picture, Angels on there too, with all the guys. You just look at it like,
Yeah.
holy crap. Like, man, he's got an array of talent on this damn roster. Disco. Can't forget Disco and Stevie Ray. It's just crazy, all the amazing stuff you get on the brand. And it's a great deal for the fans.
Oh, absolutely. And everyone who like on there, like, you mentioned like Stevie, Disco, Bin, Stevie Ray as well, Shane Douglas, all these guys have just such great minds for the business as well and can give such deep and unique different aspects to the way that things are being booked, to the way that compared to the way that it used to be and stuff like that. And I think that breaking it down, it gives, I think, a lot of wrestling fans and a lot of the Russo brand subscribers, a lot of education of the wrestling business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like the fans of the brand are of the smarter type, and not to say that other fans aren't or disparage other fans
No,
and say anything bad, but it just seems like those fans are just a little smarter to the business and want a little bit more out of the business, not just, oh, let's hear a story that may or may not be true from a wrestler. It's going to be good stuff, real stories, no bullshit. There's going to be a lot of learning and the stuff like you probably never knew before about the business, or think about the business a different way, or come at it from a different way. So I feel like the brand family is a step above maybe some other fans out there, just because they want to learn more about the business or they seem more educated about the business.
I think, more educated about the business, but also like more wanting to have an understanding deeper of the business as opposed to what is actually in front of them. And I think that's for me, like the sort of fan that I've always been. Like I've always like gone, okay, like what would make someone want to do that sort of spot at that particular, you know what I mean? Like I've always been that sort of fan where I'd break things down.
Yep.
And even now at this point I do it and I'm just like, just why? Like, like sometimes, that's more of the thing that I do, or like turning it off completely. But it's, a lot of the time, I think that, to the Russo brand, what it does give is a lot of these fans, like I said, that education and a deeper aspect into, psychology of the business and, the behind the scenes of the business as well, which, a lot of the fans really want to find out and delve deep into.
Absolutely. I feel like there's a lot of craving of the fans for more knowledge of the business, and maybe, like you said, like a deeper understanding. Like, why the hell did Kenny Omega do that? Or like that. There's no psychology behind that. And it's just interesting to get a lot of the guys' point of views and perspectives about kind of the way it should be done, or the way it was done, and the way they should be doing it now. It's just one of those things where it's like, man, I just love kind of getting into that stuff, and maybe some of it could be minutia, but I love getting into some of that stuff and listening to that stuff, and like having, Credible share some of the stuff like his psychology and why things or stuff in place there. And even Ben, all the time I have him on Pro Wrestling 101, and he'll be like, well, you do this here because of this or this guy. So I mean, I love that stuff. I just think like, man, people don't realize wrestling is a lot more intelligent, and you got to think a little bit more. You have some psychology, and there's a lot of more storytelling than you think.
Yeah, and for me, since I've become to be good friends with Angel, the stuff that I've learned from him over the time that I've known him, is just like from what I mean, like just him breaking down certain things of the business for me that I had no idea about, that I was, and I thought I was like a smart mark, so to speak, and like I thought, fuck, I didn't know shit until like Angel really started showing me and explaining how things work.
Yeah, I used to. I mean, we're talking years ago, like 17, 18 years ago. Used to go to the shows with PJ, just incredible. I've been
Yeah.
friends with him for a long time, and it's funny. He would train me and do some small stuff and teach me stuff. Nothing too crazy, but it was funny. It's like, man, I never even thought about that. And even now, all these years later, he still tells me stuff. It's like, wow, I didn't even think about that. It's just like these guys are so smart to the business, and they know so much that you, as a smart mark, you as a fan, are like, man, I didn't even think about that. I didn't know about that. It's like you don't know anything because you're not a wrestler, or you're
100%.
not you don't know anything, but you don't know as much because you're not a
Yeah.
wrestler, and there's so much. So I did some managerial stuff for a local promotion that was running in West Virginia and Virginia called PCW, and I was managing this guy Preston Quinn, who's been around forever, part of the Horsemen down there in North Carolina with CW Anderson, and he does some training for AML and stuff. But even him, when I was interfering in his match, because I'm like the heel JJ Dillon type, and he's like the the Flair or the Tully Blanchard type, and like I would think about interfering, and he would like, and you wouldn't know it, but he'd like hit the guy, like not yet, and like just the timing of when to do things, and you're in a certain match on the card. He goes, no, he goes, don't do that, because we're in the second match of the card. The next time we wrestled, we were the intermission main event. So he's like, now we could do that spot. So just like learning some stuff about the business and the storytelling is like, wow, like that's the way the business should be, and that's the way it should be done. It's quite a learning lesson, quite a like a trip to school.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing where a lot of fans can sit there and really, throw critiques out at a lot of stuff, but it's like, you know what I mean? Unless you've actually been in the ring, it's hard for someone to sit there and say, hey, X, Y, well, I mean, like they shouldn't do this, they should do this, or try and explain what a performer should do. You know what I mean? Because it's like you can't tell someone if you haven't walked a mile in those shoes.
Yeah, I feel like some fans just pretend like they know what's going on better than the wrestlers, or they think they're smarter than the wrestlers. But the wrestlers are usually applying logic and some psychology, and they're trying to tell a story, the good ones anyway. So I feel like some fans try to step in there and give you some, false information or some like BS, like, oh, they should have done this. Like, nah, it doesn't really make sense to the story, or that's kind of having no psychology, and, just kind of stuff. Like Ben was talking about how Darby Allin kind of rolled his ankle, but they didn't do anything with it. So it's like the AEW fans didn't mention that at all, and no thought of that. But an old school fan or a smart fan, or Ben, who's obviously in the business and knows the business, was like, well, that kind of makes no sense. I mean, you kind of don't have any logic there if you're not going after the ankle and you rolled it. It's kind of saying like, oh, we had this match planned and that's the match. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I think fans are a little maybe rose-colored glasses while watching some of this stuff, and not realizing that was no psychology. And you guys should, maybe be quiet and just enjoy the wrestling, but the wrestlers itself maybe need a little history lesson on some psychology and some stuff as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it as well, like, because, the generations and styles change over the years, where it's like, now it's much more like the wrestlers are more of a hybrid, smaller, dynamic, quicker performer. And it's like, it's very fast paced. Whereas before it's like you go back 15, 20 years, the matches were more methodical, slowed down, picking them apart, where it's like now it's like, okay, one move, like just trying to get one move in after another, that I find when as a fan watching it. Yeah,
I definitely do not like some of that today. I know that Dave Meltzer's the world. They think that faster style is better, and they're rating the matches over 5 stars, and they're
mm,
giving all these crazy matches with all these very, very small guys, way too high of star ratings and stuff like that. I mean, that's somebody's opinion, and that's all subjective and stuff. But to me, it's like, man, they're going too fast. They're not selling enough. They're not doing enough psychology. Like I go back and watch matches from the 80s and the 90s. To me, they still hold up. They're still great. They're still better
100%.
than what I'm seeing today. Like I just watched WrestleMania 10. I just watched Bret Owen. I was there live for it. Awesome, awesome show. But I watched it again. I'm like, man, this match holds up. Just watching Flair Steamboat from '89. It's like, holy shit, this match still holds up. The series of matches, they're
Mm,
still great. And then you watch a match from a couple of years ago, and you're like, I don't like, didn't care for it. You could say it holds up, but it's like I didn't like the psychology there. Why did they have to do 5 finishing moves in a row?
yeah.
Like 3 Canadian destroyers, and the guy the guy kicks out. It's like, holy shit, like 10 super kicks, and it doesn't even get a 2 count. Like I just sometimes today the wrestling is just absolutely ridiculous and just annoys me. And it's funny, it's like, oh, but it's faster paced. Faster paced doesn't mean it's better. That just means it's like the guys aren't selling, or the guys aren't making it look like it's a legit fight, or they're not making it look like someone's trying to win. They're making it more look like a routine. So to me, a lot of today's wrestling, not all of it, but a lot of today's wrestling is just like, oh, I hate the lack of storytelling and the lack of psychology.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, it made me think when you were rattling off some of the shows that you just watched recently. I just finished rewatching WrestleMania 13
Nice.
with with Stone Cold versus Brett. And to me, like, personally, I put that up there with one of the best matches of all time. Like,
Yeah.
as far as like storytelling and execution of storytelling as well. Like, it was just, two of the best of all time. And I feel like this generation, I don't know if there's the same caliber of a performer in WWE like a Stone Cold Steve Austin, or someone who has that charisma to really do that.
Man, that match was awesome. Maybe Austin's best match, maybe Brett's best match, maybe. Just unbelievable. One of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, WrestleMania 13. Love that match. And obviously, easily still holds up today, better than everything we see today. The Steve Austin thing, it's interesting because it's like, who could be that next guy? And I know that's like once in a generation. Well,
Mm,
technically speaking, him and The Rock came around, so maybe it was twice in a generation of guys that are just megastars. But it's like maybe Reigns, but I don't know if he's quite at that level, although he's been great lately. And he's got that quality about him with star. But man, it's like, man, that Austin level guy, when is he going to come around? I mean, it's just like, man, it's hard to find. And you just look at that roster, it's like, yeah, I like this guy, I like that guy. I mean, I love AJ Styles, I love Daniel Bryan, I like Reigns, but it's like, man, they're not a Steve Austin level.
mm,
Marketing, promotion through the roof. Anything the guy does and says is money. The guy's money in the ring. He looks like $1,000,000. They just don't have that all around package. And guys like that, I mean, they don't grow on trees. It's like impossible, I guess, to find. But who could be that guy? It's like, I don't know. And I feel like guys that they try to give the big push to, it's like, yeah, they're good, or they're up to a certain level, but they just don't have that big star quality. Like they were pushing Seth Rollins for a while. I was like, I like him. He's good in ring stuff, but he's not like the super duper star. Maybe
mm.
Reigns could be it, but I don't think he's quite clicking on that level yet. Maybe he can get there, and I like Reigns a lot, but it's just, man, I feel like maybe they're doing it on purpose. That old Triple H thing where he said there's not going to be a Steve Austin, there's not going to be another John Cena. Like maybe that's what WWE wants, but that's a killer because stars drive the business, really. I mean, when you have the big
100%.
stars, that's when it's so popular. So it's one of those things like, yeah, it's great to have WWE on the marquee and sell the WWE, and that be the reason why, everyone's going to shows and ordering shows and ordering the network or Peacock or whatever. But stars kind of make the show, and you got to have stars. So that's a misstep and a stumble on their part. But who is that guy? I mean, I don't know if it's Lashley, but I am enjoying him so far.
I'm really enjoying Lashley, and I got told a while ago from a source of mine that Lashley coming back to WWE, it was sort of said, like, because he came back a few years ago, and the deal was that he said, I'm coming back, I want to face Lesnar, and
Yep.
it's been years and it hasn't happened.
Yep.
And I think that it's been insane that it hasn't. I think that now's the time to pull the trigger if they can, because it's a money match. You've got two behemoths of guys who have legit backgrounds as well. You know what I mean? Like it's a money fight, right?
I would love it. I actually thought, because now they're going to have fans at this WrestleMania, I thought, okay, Reigns, Edge on one night, Lesnar, Lashley on the other, just to try to bump up some business, and because that's somewhat of a dream match of good proportions for the WWE to do it. So that's what I thought. But obviously, Drew kind of earned that spot, so Drew's in there, and I guess Lesnar isn't officially back yet. So maybe they save it for a big SummerSlam show, and they do another outdoor show or some sort of thing, because I think that match is a good build and is a huge match, and it's something they could do a lot with. I'm just shocked that those guys never wrestled before. You know what I mean? Like, they were kind of in the same place at the same time. So I think that adds to the build too. It's like, how the hell have these guys never wrestled before? These two big monsters, they've crossed paths but never wrestled. So that's a great selling point. And with wrestling today, everyone's wrestled each other a million times. So it's awesome to have like a dream match of guys that didn't wrestle before. It's like, wow, that's awesome as hell. Like, didn't even think about that. This is going to be the first time matchup. I love it. They could build it up. Lesnar, former UFC world champion. Bobby Lashley, I know maybe he didn't beat a lot of great guys in MMA, but still 15-2 record. He won like 10 in a row to end his MMA career. So really built it up like, hey, I'm a beast, I'm a monster. I got into MMA, you left MMA. I'm back in WWE, you left WWE. How come we haven't crossed paths? When I was coming up in the mid 2000s, you were on your way out. Like, you're running for me. They do a million different things with it, but size wise, if you just look at these guys, like, okay, Lashley's a freak. He's a monster. Lesnar's a freak. He's a monster. It just looks like an old school wrestling thing. Like Sullivan always says to me, Kevin Sullivan, like, if you put those two guys on a poster, would your eyes like say, like, holy shit, who are these guys? Godzilla and King Kong. Yes. For these two guys, it would do it. Like, these two monsters would look awesome on a poster together, whether it be WrestleMania or SummerSlam, it would be awesome. Lashley versus Lashley, whatever, SummerSlam 2021, whatever you want to do. But I think that's a money match for me, and maybe it's the inner mark in me saying that. But few matches kind of would get me just excited of like, man, I haven't seen that before, and I would love to see it.
What I'd love to see the match like in WWE, but then like if they partnered with like the UFC or Bellator, and then like 2-3 months later, then they have that as like an MMA fight on the card. It's like, okay, like they definitely wouldn't do it. The UFC, I don't think would take any part of a cross promotion like that. But to me, I think seeing him in a shoot fight would be a hell of a lot more enjoyable. But regardless, they both have very similar styles in wrestling. I think it's going to mesh very well for them together. But I definitely think it's going to lead to a big money fight.
I feel like they got to do it if they're gonna pull a trigger. It got to be that match. I guess maybe Mania wasn't enough build, and it's maybe a little too soon. But I'd have Lashley, which is crazy. I'd have him go over on McIntyre, then build up to the whole summer, and have Lesnar versus Lashley at a big stadium, SummerSlam, or just a big venue, and do that there, and you kind of make that your anchor. You could bring in another name. I don't know, Goldberg and wrestle AJ Styles or something else if you need another big name. But I'd make that the main event: Lesnar, Lashley, SummerSlam.
I don't think you even need another name besides that match. I think it's like, I mean, like you'd be able to make it like with the talent they've got, they can definitely put a good undercard underneath it. I don't think they'd have to bring in, a part timer besides Brock to really sell that card or to sell that as a pay per view. So. But guys, look, we are getting to that time. I want to be respectful of John's time. So we are going to wrap things up very soon. But John, I did warn you about this. This is going to be the Australian slang. So John, have you ever been to Australia? I know you said that your sister lives down here, correct?
Yes, she lives in I think you said it was Clovelly Beach. So she lives Clovelly. She lives not too far from Sydney, her and her family. I've actually never been. I never wanted to do that flight, but my family's been there a bunch. My brother has been there, I think 2 or 3 times, but I've never been. I heard it's very, very nice over there.
Mate, you definitely have to come, and this little game here is going to set you up for success when you come here, mate. So don't worry about it. So how it's going to work is I'm going to say an Aussie slang word. I'm going to put it in a sentence for you, and you're going to have to tell me what it means. So first one is Hey, mate, you want to come over to my house for brekkie? Brekkie.
Got to be breakfast. Got to be.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, mate. I'll say. Hey, mate. Jesus, bloody oath. Did you see that? Bloody oath.
Bloody hell, I guess.
Blood, yeah, pretty much like what the fuck? Like, did you
Okay, yeah,
see
what the
that?
fuck?
Like, yeah,
Okay,
more
all
on the
right.
spot. So,
Like a
all
British
right,
thing, like, bloody hell, mate. You know,
yeah, we say fuck me dead. But another one we got here is Bottle-O. Hey, John, before you come over to my place, just swing past the Bottle-O,
that the bar, the liquor store.
the liquor store. You got it.
Nice, nice.
Hey, mate, before you leave, you might want to grab a brolly. Brolly.
Is it a beer or I don't know.
Umbrella.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Okay. Now, this one is Budgie Smuggler. Oh, shit. My dad's outside near the swimming pool again, and he's wearing his Budgie Smuggler.
His underwear.
Speedo.
Oh, speed. Okay, okay.
Yeah, they call it a Budgie Smuggler because once you get wet and get out, and anyway, we won't go there.
I got you.
So we'll go a couple more. Dead set. Are you dead set?
Like you're definitely you're not going to change your mind. You're dead set on doing something. Like, is that what that means?
No, it means like, are you telling me the truth here? Like, is that for real?
Oh,
Like,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I tell you what, I'm a bit devo.
Tired, maybe.
No, devastated.
Oh, okay. Oh, makes sense.
Okay, well, so we'll go with two more. Hey, John, can you fill up the esky? What's an esky?
The car, the truck.
No, so an esky's like a cooler. You put your ice and beer and stuff in like that. So
Oh,
we call it
okay.
an esky.
Nice.
Okay.
Okay.
My wife's cracked the shits and she's going off.
She's lost her mind.
Yeah, she's angry. So got the shits means she's pissed off, and going off her head means like she's just going ballistic. So
Nice. Nice.
but anyway, John, that's been Guess the Aussie Slang. Thank you, for being a guest. It's been great. And I apologize about the time mix up. I didn't know that you guys were going through daylight savings, but I definitely
Oh
want to
yeah,
get
no
you on.
problem.
I definitely want to try and get you on again because I feel like we could have
Absolutely.
gone for another hour very easily. But
Absolutely.
John,
Anytime you want, you got it.
absolutely, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for everyone who tuned in for this show tonight. Keep out for a notice for everything that Two Man Power Trip are doing. Head over to russosbrand.com. Check out the patreon.com/RussoTWC. They've got some amazing content over there. But guys, until next time, thank you for tuning in and keep your eye out for our next show.